Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today, I will be making these amazing keto Scottish shortbread cookies. They're so good that you, as well as your non-keto friends, will absolutely love them. The macronutrient ratio for these cookies is 6.5 to 1, with 1.7 grams of total carbs, a whopping 1.5 gram of dietary fiber, resulting in 0.2 grams of net carbs per cookie. These are all the ingredients you'll need. I began by placing a large mixing bowl and a fine sieve on top of my kitchen scale. I did this because it's important to weigh the ingredients very accurately for best results. After the bowl and sieve are on the scale, tare, which means press the button on your scale to get it back down to 0. Now you are ready to add the dry ingredients. I began by adding the almond flour. Then tare the scale before adding the sweetener. Tare the scale before adding the glucomannan. It's really important that you tare your scale after adding each ingredient, so that you're starting from 0 each time you add something new. This method makes it much easier to weigh things out accurately. So after you have zeroed again, add the inulin fiber and tare the scale one more time, and then add the whey protein isolate. I would strongly recommend that you use vanilla flavored powder. When you've added all the dry ingredients, then with a whisk, stir the ingredients through the sieve until everything has been sifted. This will break up any small clumps so that the ingredients will distribute evenly. Then remove the sieve and stir the dry ingredients very well. Before you add the butter, tare the scale again to 0 it. With a box grater, using large holes, grate the solid, very cold butter into the bowl. After grating about a third of the butter, toss it to blend it with the dry ingredients, to ensure that the grated butter doesn't clump, especially after you took the time to grate it. Another benefit of tossing the dry ingredients on top of the grated butter, I realized that adding this little extra step made it much easier to combine my butter and dry ingredients. I repeated this 2 or 3 times until all my butter was grated. I realized that this way of doing it is quite different than what most recipes suggest. I learned about this technique by watching Stephanie Jaworski on Joy of Baking. I have learned a lot from her clear, descriptive, and instructional videos, because in her videos she shows and also explains why you do what you do when baking, and this is what I try to do as well. I love her channel, but I can no longer use her recipes, but her explanations and methodologies are applicable to every type of baking. I will provide a link to the Joy of Baking video in the description below. Now getting back to this demonstration. When all the butter has been grated, use your fingertips to work the dry ingredients into the butter. Keep rolling the butter and dry ingredients between your fingers until all the ingredients start to hold together and until all the dry ingredients have been incorporated into the butter. Keep working in this way until you have a rough, large crumb texture. You do not want to make a dough ball. In this demonstration, I'm using mini flan pans. The nice thing about each flan is it has a removable bottom. This makes it much easier to remove your final cookie. So now I took my mini flan pans, which are just like the large 8-inch or 20 centimeter pan. Okay, now I'm going to place the flan mini pans on my kitchen scale and tare it before adding about 91 grams or about 3 ounces to 3.2 ounces per pan. After I've divided the crumpled dough evenly into the 4 mini flans, next, I spread out the crumbs as evenly as I could visually before gently pressing down on the dough crumbs. You don't need to press the dough hard, just enough to make it a bit more solid. Then make sure you go around the fluting and press down so that your cookies will look really nice. Then place the little pans onto either a cookie sheet or a pizza pan. This makes it easier to transport. As well, this bottom pan will catch any butter that leaks out of the bottom of the flan as your cookies are baking. Put everything into the freezer for about 15 minutes. Now adjust the rack in your stove to the bottom third position and start your oven preheating to 300 Fahrenheit or 148 to 150 Celsius. After removing your tray from the freezer, score each flan into 4 wedges. Do not cut all the way through. You can add the decorative holes if you like, but I find when my shortbreads are baking, everything disappears, so I have to do that again later. But do score to cut your cookies into quarters. This will allow gases to escape and prevent your cookies from getting a lump in the middle. Then place into the preheated oven and bake for 20 minutes without opening the door. When the timer rings, check your cookies right away. What you're looking for is to make sure that the center area of the cookie is not glossy or wet looking. If it is, just put it back for 5 more minutes. Then regardless how it looks, take the cookies out of the oven immediately. Remove the mini flan pans and place them onto a cooling rack. While the cookies are still warm, I find it a great time to recut into quarters. This time, however, you want to cut all the way to the bottom. And now I make the holes by using a shish kebab skewer. Here I'm making 2 holes closest to the center, then 3 or 4 holes in the middle row, and about 5 holes in the last row closest to the edge. By adding the holes, it makes the cookie look very traditional. Let the cookies cool completely in your flan pans. When the cookies are cooled, gently press up on the bottom of the pan, and you'll notice that with very gentle pressure, the cookies will pop out very easily. Then by using my smallest offset spatula, I loosen the cookies from the bottom. You'll notice that your cookies are still very crumbly, so be very careful when removing them from the bottom of the flan. Place the cookies onto a cooling rack and let cool at room temperature for about 12 to 24 hours. I found that when I left the cookies alone for 24 hours to air dry, something magical happened. They became delicious and they tasted just like the original Scottish shortbreads I had in Edinburgh. I have to confess that even though I was trying to keep keto on this trip, I just love real Scottish shortbread, so I have to admit I did have a nibble of one because I just couldn't resist that buttery rich deliciousness of the authentic Scottish shortbread cookies. In creating this recipe, I worked for a very long time to try to duplicate that recipe. I hope you make these cookies, and especially for January 25th this year, in order to commemorate the colorful Scottish poet Robbie Burns. And in toasting Robbie Burns, it would not be complete without a jigger of real Scottish whiskey. So even though I rarely drink alcohol on my keto diet, I had to make this exception. I brought these 3 back from Scotland because they were my favorite single malt brands of Scotch whiskey. Until next time, enjoy these amazing shortbread cookies. See you next time and thank you for watching. The printable recipe is available in the description below.